Hello, everybody. Today I want to look at, briefly, C.S. Lewis's book, The Abolition of Man. Now, it's a little bit unfortunate that this video should be brief because this is a book that could be talked about for hours. And I just don't have hours, and neither do you. But let's look at it for a little bit anyway and discuss some of the main things going on. So, C.S. Lewis wrote this during World War II. And as I understand, it's a collection of 3 speeches he gave on 3 consecutive nights in 1943. And what it's about is he is writing in response to a new book on literary criticism, a book written by a couple of men who are trying to teach students how to critically analyze literature, English literature in particular. And C.S. Lewis takes them to task. He calls their book the Green Book and refers to the authors by a code name, Gaius and Titius. But the book that he wrote about is actually known. But anyway, it should be noted that Lewis is not calling for the abolition of man. He's saying the results of their book, if it is taught to youngsters, that it is going to lead to the abolition of man, and that would be a bad thing. And as they said on the Literary Life podcast about this book, they would say that this might be the original clickbait, calling this book The Abolition of Man. So if we come inside here and take a look at the table of contents, you will see it only has 3 chapters, and it is not a long book at all. Men Without Chests, The Way, and the Abolition of Man. And so this book actually forms the basis for much of the Chronicles of Narnia books. And what the problem was with the so-called Green Book by Gaius and Titius is that it is getting rid of objective value. Their book appeals to subjective value. And that is a very bad thing. And Lewis is trying to tell his audience, I am not just being an alarmist here. There are terrible consequences by going down the road that Gaius and Titius want us to go, that the Green Book wants us to take. And by rejecting objective value, Lewis calls the Green Book, the authors of the Green Book, debunkers, and people like them, debunkers. Now, that is not to say that debunking itself is bad. It's not in the sense of saying, hey, this is false over here. I'm going to show why flat earth is false or whatever, whatever it might be. It's not saying debunking in that sense is bad. Lewis is using the term debunker specifically for the rejection of objective value. And we see some of this in the Chronicles of Narnia. In Voyage of the Dawn Treader, there's Eustace, who reads books full of facts that are useless. He does not at all understand his cousins Edmund and Lucy at first, because Eustace is being taught by debunkers. They're teaching him that the imagination that Lucy and Edmund have is completely ridiculous and should be rejected in favor of cold, hard facts, at least facts as Eustace understands them. But there's actually more to the world than that, right? And then you have the mechanistic Telmarines who live as much as possible outside of nature, separated from it. They fear the woods. They fear the Narnians. They're a whole society of debunkers. And that's very interesting. You see in the movie, which actually gives the image of the Telmarines very well. How do they get to the Narnians? They have to build this very complicated and strong bridge, because they're terrified of nature. It's the only way they can get to the Narnians. And then we have in the book, The Last Battle, we have the ape in The Last Battle. He's the logical conclusion of the debunker that's in power. Everything that the ape offers is counterfeit and thus devoid of meaning and substance. And that's really the point of this concern about debunkers, is that they rob meaning and substance from everything. And the end times certainly represent the ultimate age of debunkers, and that's what the last battle is really all about. And Lewis's point in the book is that the ability to recognize objective value comes from the threefold soul of man, his reason, his heart, and his will. And that these things need to be in balance. You need to be a well-ordered human being. When these get out of balance, then you become a debunker. In Lewis's day, they were rejecting emotion, the emotional part of man, the heart of man. Today, in our society, we see the pendulum has swung the other way. We still have a society of debunkers, but they are leading with the heart. And that is not a good thing either. It is man out of balance. And Lewis's concerns are very real. That's how we end up with some of the social ills that we see being promoted online that we disagree with, some of the social policies, some of the taboos in political correctness that we can't talk about. Even if I were to say some of the things right now that we all know, if I were to say them on YouTube, this video would be torn down. But I think you know what I mean. This six-colored rainbow that is going around, that sort of thing. Those are debunkers. Those are all debunkers. They reject objective value. And this is what Lewis is really trying to attack. And just a few quotes here. Lewis says in the first chapter, "No emotion is in itself a judgment. In that sense, all emotions and sentiments are alogical. But they can be reasonable and unreasonable as they conform to reason or fail to conform. The heart never takes the place of the head, but it can and should obey it." And then the old way of doing things is what the debunkers are trying to get rid of. But the old, this is a quote now, "The old was a kind of propagation, men transmitting manhood to men. The new is merely propaganda." So what we're being offered by debunkers is just propaganda. It's nothing more. It's without meaning and without substance. Okay. Let's see. There's another good one. So the debunkers offer us a kind of skepticism, right? And then Lewis says their skepticism about values is on the surface. It is for the use on other people's values. About the values current in their own set, they are not nearly skeptical enough. So they will attack, the way that we're supposed to be, the way that we're supposed to be rightly ordered and believing in objective value and letting objective value help us form judgments about the world and things that we come across. They're rejecting that. That would be the way, right? Or that Lewis calls the Tao. Now, Lewis apparently was one of the most widely read men in the history of English-speaking countries. And he's not saying Tao necessarily in the way of Eastern philosophy. He's using that as a word, kind of a catch-all, to describe what he means by being a rightly ordered man and subscribing to objective value. And he does say that some things have to be self-evident. We have to take some things as being self-evident. And he says, if nothing is self-evident, nothing can be proved. Similarly, if nothing is obligatory for its own sake, then nothing is obligatory at all. And that's kind of what the debunkers are missing out on. And let's see, this thing which I have called for convenience the Tao, and which others may call natural law or traditional morality, or the first principles of practical reason, or the first platitudes, is not one among a series of possible systems of value. It is the sole source of value, the sole source of all value judgments. If it is rejected, all value is rejected. If any value is retained, it is retained. The effort to refute it and to raise a new system of value in its place is self-contradictory. There has never been and never will be a radically new judgment of value in the history of the world. And that's in the chapter The Way. And I don't want to read all these quotes to you, but let's see now. There's also talking about, he talks about in the final chapter, the conquest of nature. How by man creating airplanes, we've defeated the sky, we've conquered nature, or ships that can cross all the oceans and all weather. Oh, we defeated the ocean. Have we really though? It's that idea that Lewis is attacking here, because that's a debunker kind of idea. Man's conquest of nature, in the dreams of some scientific planners are realized, means the rule of a few hundreds of men over billions upon billions of men. And he calls this the magician's bargain. So it is the magician's bargain. Give up our soul, get power in return. But once our souls, that is ourselves, have been given up, the power thus conferred will not belong to us. We shall, in fact, be the slaves and puppets of that to which we have given our souls. Only the Tao provides a common human law of action which can overarch rulers and ruled alike. A dogmatic belief in objective value is necessary to the very idea of a rule which is not tyranny, or an obedience which is not slavery. And as you see my note here, my chicken scratch, this may be the most consequential book I have read this year, and outside the Bible, of course. And I think that this deserves your time, it deserves your consideration. And I read this, as you saw, at the beginning of September, and we are on September 20th now. I'm still thinking about this book, and I'm probably going to be thinking about this for months to come and maybe years to come. So I hope that encourages you to seek out The Abolition of Man and check it out. I guess technically it would be about a certain education philosophy, how to educate people. And if you're familiar at all with, I forgot her name. It would have been better if I had remembered this before. Charlotte Mason. If you're familiar with Charlotte Mason at all, C.S. Lewis is very much in concert with Charlotte Mason. But she's from a different generation, an earlier generation than him. But they have the same kind of ideas. And I think that you, especially if you are a home educator, if you educate your children at home, but even if you don't, if they're at some other school, whether public or private, I think you need to read this as a parent. And I think that all people in the West especially need to read this book. All right, well, that's all I'm going to say for now. I hope everyone has a great day.